And then, because you put different amounts of books in different boxes, etc. And then the distribution process. And so trying to identify the right organizations that have the right number of kids matched with the number of books that we have. So the first year was a huge success. We learned a ton from it. And there was a lot of interest from the league. You know, a lot of league members have young kids, and so reading is just something that's part of their daily life, and so it was a really good niche for us. And we felt like we were really making an impact on kids that needed it. You guys have all, I'm sure, seen research on the importance of having books in your home in order to be able to learn how to read. So it was, you could really sense that direct impact. And then the next year, we like I said, we learned a ton. So that very next year, we immediately got bigger warehouse space. We streamlined our, collection process. We were able to streamline our process with members and how do you create your own book drive in your neighborhood, at your kids' daycare, wherever it may be, at your work site. So the key elements were there the first year, but then we were really able to build upon that in the following years. So, and then you would have a better idea of how many we started collecting towards the end.
Yeah, so I was chair in year 4, I think, and by that time we were at maybe collecting 75,000 but giving out 60, because a lot of times we'd get things that weren't really age appropriate, or Twilight books, and we didn't feel good giving to 14-year-olds and that kind of thing. But just to build on Karen's thing, I think what was interesting about Books for Kids is it went through a really natural evolution, and it grew over time. So by year 4, we were then building on what the previous years had done in terms of resources for member drives and saying, okay, well, how do we create challenges between schools? So we really kicked off this whole school challenge concept. And elementary schools would have contests against each other, or grade levels would have contests against each other, and we had kits for how to do that. And so over time, it built and built, and I think in subsequent years they did an even harder push to publisher donations. So every year we sort of took off a new chunk and worked it. The thing I would comment to on the reading program is one of the things, just for all of you, because I think it'll be helpful when we're designing new projects, is it was really hard, I think, to have this continuing, ongoing, touch point program while you were doing something that was this huge, big event that we were all building towards. And Books for Kids got so frantic, crazy when we were collecting the books and then distributing the books out to the schools that it was all hands on deck, and we would just, the reading program would sort of get dropped. And people would be pulled in to help them with things. So it almost either needed to be a separate initiative, or I think it was hard to balance the two of them. I don't know if you experienced that.
Books for Bowling was born.
Oh, yeah, Books for Bowling was born. And actually, yeah, Michelle was our member that led that.
I did. That was actually really fun. And all of my daughter's friends had to come and work it. Your mother should never volunteer when you're in high school. It's a lot of work. Yeah, that was one that somebody just threw out a random idea, and a couple of us got together and went, bowling. We can make this work. Pizza, bowling kids, we can figure it out. So that was a nice addition.
And Books for Bowling, can I explain what it was?
Oh.
Not everybody.
Books for Bowling was a fundraiser, a book raiser that was for the community. We went out to the community, put flyers up at Caribou, and told schools that anybody could come if they just needed to bring books, and then they could bowl for free at Park Tavern. And we had pizza, and we had soda, and the first year we had Cat in the Hat, and we had tattoo stations, but it was all free. And the concept was getting the community to come in and be a part of us, and us showing them that we are here and we want to be a resource.
What was interesting is I think when your team started it, it was really focused on sort of an exciting event for leaguers to bring books. But by the end of it, maybe it's still going, I'm not sure if they're doing it again, it almost became something where community members, some of the recipients were coming and bringing things. In fact, I think a couple years ago I think when I was VP Projects, we had our first book that came back to us, because we had a stamp in them, so we were able to tell that we were giving them out. We were always wondering when we were going to get the first one that would cycle back to us. So.
Very good. The other thing I'd add about Books for Kids, just because I think it's sorry that we're talking about it so much, but I think it's a really good example of how a project came to fruition and was very successful and then has transitioned out. We had, not only did we distribute the books, but then we held, for several years, a distribution event. And so either at one of the recipient organizations or at one of the locally owned bookstores, which was a collection site for us, we held kind of a kickoff and distribution event. And I think towards the end of the project that didn't occur. And I think in hindsight that was probably a miss, because Books for Kids was definitely, I think it's very similar to Backpack Buddies, right? No, yeah, okay, I get all my Books for Kids, Backpack Buddies.
Yeah.
Backpack Buddies, where you're in a warehouse, you're sorting, you're stuffing, and you don't see the kids. And so the reading program was that element where you could see the kids, but it just wasn't feasible. So I think that, I only say that because I think members are really looking for that interaction, but you have to be realistic about what that interaction can really be. And so Books for Kids, having that as an opportunity for volunteers to get involved, really helped them kind of justify their time spent in the warehouse space, because the warehouse, it's a warehouse, and you're sorting and you're chatting with volunteers, but you're not seeing the kids. So I think it's just important with our projects to try and always bring it back to who's receiving our services and how they're benefiting from it. So
Karen makes a really good point, because we had shopping events where we would go to a school and the kids would get to pick 5 books, and you'd work with the kids to help them pick the books. And I think that was really energizing for the committee, because we would do those a couple times throughout the year. And to your point, it got to be old in the warehouse a lot, packing. And then when you actually go out there and you're sitting with a kid and they're getting so excited because they get to pick 5 books, and it's such a big day for them. Yeah, it's got a lot of impact.
Michelle, you want to touch on Between the Lines?